Over the past few months, we've seen something that we never thought we would experience in our lifetimes. I think in many ways it's still unfathomable what is occurring and how this pandemic and COVID 19 is spreading throughout the world. It's affecting the way we live, work, play, associate with other people, create, and it's put strains on our relationships with our friends, our family, because we can't see them in person, really, at least if we're trying to be safe. And so I've had the opportunity through friends and colleagues to learn a lot about how people are coping, the experiences that they're having. And I wanted to provide an opportunity to kind of get those ideas and stories out there. Maybe this is a way that people could learn from others and what they're experiencing. Maybe you can relate to them. Maybe there's new opportunities for collaboration and connection and communication. We don't really know what is going to come uh, the next few months, let alone next few days. So I just wanted to have yet another podcast because I'm sure there's not enough other people doing that right now, where I talk with some folks from animators and designers to teachers to owners of nonprofits to gig workers, hourly workers, heads of companies, just different people across this country, at least for now, in the United States, of what they're going through and what their experiences has been, and just trying to get everyone's story told and hope we can all learn a little bit and connect a little bit from it. So I wanted to bring and talk to my friends Andy and Greg. Andy is a designer and illustrator, and Greg is an illustrator. I've known them for, gosh, almost 20 years, I think, if not more, give or take. And so Andy's in New York. Greg was in New York, but now is here in Atlanta, where I am. And I just think this is an interesting time. How does this affect your business, your creativity, your mental state through all this? So, and also, anything from like trying to get unemployment if it's something that works for you, or just what the landscape is. And so, this may seem kind of general, but I would love for each of you guys to like first just say a little bit about yourself and kind of like one thing, maybe two, that you see has like drastically changed for you. So I don't know if Greg, you want to go first.
Thanks for having me, Brad. Uh, yeah, so I'm an illustrator, full-time illustrator, editorial illustrator mostly, so magazines, newspapers, things like that. And I've done work in animation and comics and independent comics and zines and all kinds of stuff, anything related to drawing, murals, things like that. And so I work from home usually, so this kind of stay-at-home order is like works for me. I'm very like much in my comfort zone here. I like working from home. But the major shift that's happened for me is just when I'm able to work. So my daughter, I have a 1-year-old daughter, and her daycare closed. Um, we actually pulled her from daycare a few days before they closed, just because it was getting to that point in the middle of March, and just like felt I put together a plan basically in one day when I decided to pull her from daycare. I told my wife, Katie, I'm like, all right, this is what's going to happen. Because Katie was already working from home
Hmm.
for 2 days, I think, at that point.
Hmm.
And she was like, we were unsure if we were going to pull Joni from daycare or just wait until they closed officially. Um, but I just kind of was like, I don't want her there. And this is what I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to watch her during the day, and then I'm going to work at night. And then we're just going to figure out how that schedule works. So right now, what we've been doing for the past month is, um, you know, I kind of sleep till like 8:45 or 9 a.m. Because I've been up the night before. And so Katie will do all of the kind of morning stuff with our daughter Joni, and kind of get her ready for the day and all that. And then from 9 to 5, I'm with Joni, full time. And then from like 5 to 7, we do dinner time, bath time. She goes to bed at like 7:30. We have dinner, and then from like 8 to 2 a.m., I'm pretty much working. So sometimes till 3. It depends, but as long as I'm getting those 6 hours, like 3 to 9, or 2 to 8:30, something like that, then I'm making it work, and I'm trying to do as much personal work as I can during this time. Some of my But the two jobs that I had right before the stay-at-home orders and quarantine and virus hit, uh, they were for like some big clients. It was like a New York Times job and an ESPN job, and both of those jobs like were finished. And I got paid for them, but they just couldn't be shared because the subject matter was irrelevant at that point that the virus hit. So
Right.
they just decided not to publish them. They might be published in the future, but it might be like a year, 2 years from now, depending on what happens. So we'll see. But then, yeah, for the first few weeks of quarantining, I wasn't getting jobs. So I was just kind of taking the time to work on my own stuff. And then in the past week, I got two jobs that came in. So I'm kind of back to, working still at night. And I can get things done sometimes while she's napping during the day. And yeah.
I'm gonna come back to, because I wanna hear from both of you that on the one of modifying your schedule and how that's affecting you, and also what you've been doing with your personal work in between. Because I know both of you guys are kind of good at being creative for your own interests. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But Andy, I guess kind of give me your overview too. I mean, you're in it. You may have even had it, right? You think? And so, what? How has this been for you? Have you been seeing the same thing with work, drying up, and with that, like, how have you changed the way you're focusing your work and your daily schedule and being creative still through all this and being stuck at home?
Yeah, for sure. I'll give you a quick. I've been in New York for about like 9 years, 9.5 years, working as a designer. I've been focusing the past 5 years as into taking more illustration work,
Right.
just doing anything art related. I work with a lot of comedians, artists, musicians. That's kind of been like the through line through my whole career, like working with musicians. That's how I got into like graphic design, just doing things for my own band and other people's bands. But yeah, I currently right now I'm working full time for the NFL. I just started in January. That first week of March, I started hearing rumblings via just like company emails about uh, the COVID and how it's affecting COVID-19 and how it's affecting. But it was mostly like about how it was affecting the people that actually have to see, uh, be in these countries, be in Iran,
Mhm,
Korea,
mhm.
China, like people that are going on meetings and their procedures on when they come back and all that stuff. But it wasn't until the second week where we were starting getting emails about actually working from home. So it was
Right.
let's say the Tuesday of the second week of March, and that was when the anxiety set in because I was so not prepared for any of this.
Right.
And on top of that, my fiance's ring was coming in the mail from the jeweler that week, and the jeweler was trying to determine where to ship that ring. And originally, I had it. I wanted him to send it to the office because it's just way more secure than sending it to my apartment building. But basically, it's just I've been working full time since. Technically, my schedule hasn't changed work
Right.
wise, but everything around it has obviously changed. And going through what I believe to be the virus, uh, because I got like 75 to 80% of the symptoms,
Mhm.
and there was no.
As did your fiance as well.
Yeah, she got it the week after I got it,
Right.
and there was no way we were going to be tested because one of my coworkers from my old job at DirecTV,
Yeah.
he got it, and he got it bad, and I want to say he's mid 40s,
Yeah.
but he was being told by his doctor, by the hospital, by pretty much all the medical professionals that you're not going to get tested unless like you're coughing up your lung and
Right.
you were doing really bad. So we just we did the best we could.
Yeah. And it seems like, you're there is this this is going to be probably the most overused phrase forever, is the new normal, right? So we're all trying to find that and figure out that what that is, and that's everything from how we do our jobs to like our interpersonal relationships. You even, if you don't mind talking about it, pulled an audible on your proposal, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about that and how, everyday life things are just, we have to adapt.
So the plan originally
Yeah.
was to propose in the beginning of March. It's our 2-year anniversary of just dating.
Yeah.
And the original plan would be to have like a fancy night out, go to dinner, and then reconvene somewhere in Midtown at Bryant Park, because that park was the kind of our meeting space. The first year that we were dating, after work, we would just go there and hang out, and even see each other for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or just go do something from there. So the plan was to do it there. It was supposed to be super romantic, in the middle of the after work crowd and the hustle and bustle. But um the virus kind of put the kibosh on that.
Yeah.
And so like the plan B was to do it at my dog Lebowski, his it would be his 8th birthday party in April, because I was thinking about all the friends are going to be there. This would be the perfect opportunity to do it amongst the people that we love and see like the
Yeah.
most for day to day. But I believe like 3 or 4 weeks into March, I was like, that's not going to happen. She was inspired by these photographers doing these what do you call it, porch portraits from afar, and she wanted to do it. And that was she started talking about it last week, and she was talking about it all week. And I was just like, oh, we're just going to take the camera out, put it on a tripod. But that Saturday morning, which we were going to do it, she was getting ready like to the nines. Like she was getting her hair done, she was doing her makeup, she was matching jewelry, so done up. And I was about to, I was actually taking a shower when I realized, I was like, Andy, this is the only opportunity that you have to like not be in sweatpants, not be not be in sweatpants, be done up for like a date. Like I saw that opportunity and I was like, I have to do it now. So it was actually pretty wonderful, and it was unexpected for her. And
That's awesome.
she said yes.
That would have been real awkward if you were quarantined together and she didn't say yes, but I'm glad, we all knew she would, hopefully. But
Yeah, and yeah, it was fun. Like there was a couple of neighbors were on the street, and like they
Yeah.
saw us and they clapped for us, and it was a really sweet, nice little moment. But we made the best of it that we could, and I think that was the great opportunity to do something like that.
in talking about that, making the best opportunity that we could, I feel like that's kind of where we're at with a lot of stuff right now, right? So I don't know if you guys have any for yourselves or things that you've learned that maybe also you could tell others of, like how you've been able to try and still be creative. What you've done personally, maybe by kind of almost live drawings that you guys have done on Instagram, and maybe talk about that. But what you're doing right now to even though you're both have been comfortable working from home in the past, it's still a different landscape that we're dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, I think everyone's circumstance is different. Like everyone is going to have to everyone is trying to make things work for the circumstances that they're under. Like, we have a 1-year old and that is a certain dynamic. And then there's some of our friends have like an 8-year old and a 5-year old and a 2-year old. And it's like, everyone's like running around and they're having to homeschool and juggle all these kind of different needs and dynamics and like the amount of space you have. So, as far as just me, like my schedule and my kind of routine, I don't know, I just feel very like grateful that I'm able to kind of focus on projects that I've been wanting to do for a long time.
Sure.
Because, a lot of people, there's this kind of like narrative right now of like, now's the time to like do that project that you've always been wanting to work on, and or like read that book, and like do all that stuff because you're at home, but not everyone is able to be at home. They have essential workers that are out and, keeping everything going. So, but as far as like my stuff is concerned, I think, having our daughter a year ago really changed our relationship with time. Especially me, I used to just work more like fluidly in terms of like my work day, like if I stayed up super late the night before, I'd wake up, I'd kind of sleep in a bit, and
Right.
I might get into like a real rhythm with work around 4 p.m. and then I'll just like keep going until 8. But like with my daughter in daycare, it was like I had a strict schedule of 9 to 5 and I had to do all my work within that amount of time, and it was kind of challenging for me to make it work. So I think I felt like a little bit on some kind of life treadmill. Like I always felt behind and I couldn't keep up, and the pace of things with just everyone on social media and there's emails constantly, like that pace of life, I think I was just feeling a lot of anxiety and stress with it.
Sure.
And then since all of this happened, I think it just felt like getting off the treadmill
Right.
in a way for me. And maybe it was just like a personal mentality switch that happened inside, that I was just like, now's the time to kind of, because everything has changed, I'm going to now focus on projects and ideas that I've been wanting to do for a long time. And because I only have this limited amount of time at night to work, I'm going to actually like use that time wisely, because it's my time. And, if work's not coming in, I'm going to just make my own projects because that's what generates work. And so that's what I've found is like, I've talked to Andy about this in the past, like really having trouble with being active on social media and like putting yourself out there. And Andy's like really good at social media, is like an Instagram story master guru. Like we had pizza in New York, like right before I moved. And I was just like, dude, I don't know how to use social media for my like work.
Right.
And, we kind of were talking, it was just like, make work for social media, like just make it, put it on there. And that's the client in a way.
Yeah, you're treating it as just another project. It may be for yourself, but you're putting it through the paces that you would for any other client.
Yeah. And I don't know, like before all of this happened, I'd be so busy with like the day-to-day jobs that I was doing, and just like everything was just mashed together between like, oh, I gotta do my taxes and I gotta do this and I gotta do that. And it was just hard to like keep social media top of mind. But for some reason now it's like I'm able to just say, okay, I'm going to just try to put something out once a day. I'm going to work at night. If I finish something, I'm going to post it the next day.
Right.
And that's kind of been a motivating factor to just make stuff as much as possible. So that's what I'm trying to do now. And now I'm seeing, like, after a month of doing that, I just got some jobs come in this week. So
Do you think that helped lead to that, or it was just,
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm realizing after like way too late that I'm realizing it. But I've always been posting on social media, like updating, like, oh, I just did this project. Oh, here's sketchbook stuff, but not as like crazy, like, I don't know, not as intensely as I should, as like regularly as I should have.
I feel like a lot of your posts more lately, there's an interactivity between them where you're posing questions, you're trying to draw something or put something out there that relates to something going on that people can relate to. And I've been seeing people have been regramming them or putting them on their stories, which I think is really neat because it's like you're almost, I'm looking at the wrong camera. You're almost creating like free brand ambassadors in a way. Like people are out there helping you because they like your work. So I think that's great.
I think like the first day that I like sat down to work at night after watching Joni, I was like trying to think what I was going to work on that night. And I was like, what does work look like? What does my work mean right now?
Yeah.
In this kind of weird way. And
I've had a lot of trouble with that recently or I've been asking myself that question too, because like, I feel like there's like so much seriousness in what's happening in the world right now. There's so much uncertainty, and my work, my artwork and my illustrative work has focused a lot on like like silly, spooky, dark things.
Yeah.
And I feel like, for instance, I was trying to make like a monster or a serial killer out of the coronavirus, like to personify it somehow.
Right.
But I backed off of that idea in a little bit. When I started it, I backed off it because I was like, I don't want to trivialize this. And I think my type of personality is I tend to kind of let things happen a little bit before I jump in to just kind of see how things pan out. But I think just like Greg's own situation, like um, I've been trying to understand and see and figure out how to insert my own personal work around my normal work. My whole first like March essentially was just kind of figuring out handling stress, handling anxiety, handling like just my workflow at home, how to stay focused, things like that. Like my whole brain power is just trying to figure out how to stay on track,
Right.
not getting distracted. I think one a huge positive was that like life became a little bit more precious in a way. Like it just a lot of this silly shit that we worry about.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I like sneakers. Like sometimes I obsessed over certain sneakers, and like that just flew out the window. One, I don't know how long I'm a contract freelance designer for the NFL, so I don't know how much longer um, they're going to have me. It's kind of like this uncertainty that it really sucks, but
Yeah.
it is kind of a life lesson in that you can't really expect the paycheck to always be there. And that's something that I learned as a freelancer. But, um, you know, things got kind of comfortable over the past couple, like 3 to 4 years, where I was getting consistent work. Like I would have maybe a week off between jobs.
Right.
And then last year that really changed for me. That amount of work dried up, and then thankfully I'm with the NFL. But I've been with the NFL since January, and for this foreseeable future.
Right.
But we don't know what that future is going to be like. We're under the assumption right now that this is me speaking for myself. I'm under the assumption that the season's going to start in the fall.
Right.
Is it going to be like a WWE model where there's going to be no people in the stadiums? We'll see. I don't know. But I feel the positive is that I'm looking at life with a lot less frivolous stuff in the lens right now.
You've talked to me a lot about your own experiences, right? What else are you hearing from um, what other folks in the industry are dealing with, and how they're getting through this, or struggling?
I don't know. I think with illustration, like editorial illustration, it's a little bit of a mix. There are still obviously like illustration opportunities out there. A lot of like newspapers, magazines are relying more on illustration because photo shoots are not really possible right now.
Right.
So I saw like a lot of major magazines are using illustration on the cover when they normally would never do that, just because it wasn't part of their brand or style. So I think people are relying on illustration. There's a lot of obviously like COVID-19 related illustration needs out there. But I think I'm a little bit, right now it's not so much of a concern, but maybe in the future as some of these businesses really start to struggle, like for instance, newspapers rely heavily on advertising. And if certain businesses are not really spending so much money on advertising, then their budgets go down and the amount of illustrations that they can commission go down. So I don't know. It's kind of like a wait and see kind of thing. But as far as I know, some jobs just came in for me, and happy to do them. But we'll see how things go.
Yeah.
Next year. Because I know in like 2008, when like the economy, when there was a recession, a lot of design jobs, illustration jobs kind of dried up, and it was, I think our industry kind of goes with the ebbs and flows of the economy. So when it's really good, there's a lot of illustration being hired. At least right now, I think there's a need for it, so that's good. There is always a need for it, when people are trying to communicate things. So yeah, I think it'll just be a wait and see kind of thing.
So there's that need for it, right? But we're running into those instances where you're freelancers, right? And there's a world of if the work isn't coming through and trying to get unemployment. Like, do you see if you or others kind of changing your focus or way you're approaching things to make sure, like, how do I think about an income that's coming through? Can I even apply for unemployment because I'm having enough trouble because I had a million jobs with different clients that I need to try and show, not just one, to try and get approved? Like, how do you see maybe you guys need to change, or what do you think out there needs to change to adapt to how our world and society really is with gig workers and freelancers?
This just magnifies um, this magnifies a lot of the problems that we see in our society regarding the lack of social safety nets.
Mm.
Um, like for instance, Greg and I have multiple employers, and Greg even more so, like takes jobs from so many different sources, and that I was hearing he was having trouble. Like some states have to, like, you have to actually show all this representation of who you work for. I think that's fucking ridiculous, to be honest. Like, I think that's crazy. And not only I think that's crazy in a way too, just because like the culture almost in the past 5 to 7 years has supported that kind of thought.
Right.
Like, yeah, be a freelancer, yeah, be independent, do your own thing. And I'm kind of I took that ride too. That's kind of where my head was at 5 years ago, because quite honestly, what I was seeing working as a designer, like when I was beginning to cut my teeth as a designer in New York, I had a lot of great opportunities, but what I was seeing often was that however much you made salary wise, it didn't matter, because you were working eight you're working 10 to 12 to sometimes 14-hour days.
Mm.
So my thought process 5-6 years ago was, well, you take your salary, divide it by the hourly, this is what you're really getting. So the compensation in regards to like freelancing, in my experience, was like, um, it made sense, because however many hours I worked, I got that money for those hours. And but now that I'm a little bit older and I'm looking forward to like long-term things,
Mm.
I'm just my thought process has changed about that. I want a little bit more security.
Especially if you're taking into account healthcare, right? That's like, what does that mean? Free testing maybe for folks. There's a lot we don't know. There's a lot we've been told, but that is just one aspect of this. And in some cases, I know a lot of folks that are freelancers that felt they probably should go into the hospital. Maybe they should get checked, but they don't know what the cost may or may not be. And right now, they're just trying to hold on to what they have to pay their bills. So it's there's a catch 22 going on, right? Of you want to stay healthy and be good, and you need to work, and it's hard to find that balance.
I think there's a lot of big questions that I don't have the answers for,
Right.
but I think that anyone with half a brain can see that this is putting a magnifying glass on a lot of the problems. And
Right.
it's just it's an enormous it's a never-ending whirlwind of that you could get trapped into if you start pulling up articles late at night and start reading about this. But I think I have a wonderful support system at home.
Yeah.
I have a wonderful friendships that keep me afloat.
For sure.
And like, to my point back a couple minutes ago, this has just put this has made this situation has made all of those things way more meaningful than they were
Right.
a year ago, which we just it just shows us that we need each other.
Hmm.
And not only me to you as friends, but me to my greater community, like and that I think that's definitely something that I've taken away from this, you know.
I totally agree with Andy. It's like exposed all the flaws in the system that you're just like, everyone is just knows there's problems, and it's like, oh, it's impossible to solve these problems. We're just gonna like keep it going. And then something like this just is like, well, like let me show you all the ways in which your whole like infrastructure cannot
Right.
support this public health crisis. And hopefully we come out on the other side of it with some good things and not bad things, because I think it could go either way.
Absolutely.
People in power can kind of like take advantage of the situation and limit our rights moving forward, or
Right.
we can get some more like equitable, social safety net things implemented in the future. So we'll have to see.
With all that, right, though, what are there positives that you've seen in some way that have come out of this, whether it be like personal, professionally, socially? I know, um, like Andy was mentioning before, having the friendship net of people such as yourselves, right, and being able to talk to you guys almost every day, and having different perspectives, um maybe reconnecting socially, even though we were already talking, but connecting socially, to hit my mic, connecting socially in certain things. But we've also talked about what's going on in the world. We've talked about what's going on with our jobs. Have you seen anything amongst yourselves or with other people that we're getting glimpses of? Hey, this is really bad, but A, we're getting through it one way or another, and B, I've learned this about myself or about my work or about my family. Is there anything you'd want to share in those regards?
I think before this hit, I was like feeling like super stressed out about little things. Like little things would trigger me, like traffic, and
Mm-hmm.
I would just kind of go into like just a bad place and be like, you know, um, I don't know, it's just super frustrated. And I was like, I've told you guys, like, I'm like super into like Eckhart Tolle now, because I found him on YouTube, and it was just like the gist of what he was saying that like really connected with me is just understand that all of the stuff surrounding um, the present moment,
Yeah.
like the past and the future, and all these anxieties, and like what does this mean? What does that mean? And it's not really reality. It's really just like the present moment that is reality. So what's happening right now, and how do you kind of choose to confront what's happening right now? So that was kind of like happening before this all happened, and it really helped my mental health and mood, and um, just trying to like look at what's actually happening and then come to terms with it and just accept it rather than trying to fight it. So I think when all this happened with you know Joni's daycare closing, like I pretty much like immediately like accepted it and was just like, okay, like this is how it is now. So
Sure.
what are you gonna do? I'm gonna watch her during the day. I'm gonna work at night, rather than like spinning out of control and being like, oh, this is gonna set me back in my career, and like all these people are going to have all this time like to themselves to like make all this stuff, and they're going to
Mm.
get so far ahead of me, and all of that's and then like beating myself up about the past, like, oh, you should have used your 20s like more wisely. It's like, why didn't you do this, that, and the other thing like before you had a kid? And you could just really kind of beat yourself up. And now it's just like, okay. And it's like, again, like the treadmill thing, everyone just stopped, and everyone is trying to deal with like the day, parents with their kids, and their like kids are running around while they're on like conference calls. And like, okay, we need to get groceries, like that's our thing today, we're going to go to the grocery store.
Mm.
It's very much like day to day,
Mm-hmm.
we're just trying to like deal with the moment.
Right.
And there's a lot of anxiety about the future, but what's helping me is to just deal with the present moment as much as possible. I accept it rather than fight it. um
That's great.
so yeah, that's kind of been a positive for me, is just being more present, trying to.
How about you, Andy?
I think totally, you know, I give a huge applause to what Greg is saying, because like I think, I don't know, some like for a lot of my life, I have similar issues over with anxiety, you know, looking at too many different things and just having trouble kind of like focusing in on the now and what can I do now. Oh, let me do it, and rather than, you know, having your brain in the past and one foot in the past and one, you know, another foot fretting about the future. But yeah, I said before, like the positive aspects, I think definitely is like the closeness with my family, with my friends, with my loved ones, with my, you know, my very domestic life. It's been kind of wonderful. I'm very, very blessed and fortunate to say
Yeah.
that, like, you know, my grandparents are gone, so I don't have to worry about them. My parents are healthy. They're, you know, maintaining. They're in Florida right now, but they're going so contrary to what Florida government is doing. They've
Mm,
like locked down, they quarantine.
yeah.
They're like putting bleach on their shoes. They're not like they're swabbing everything down with
Right.
alcohol, you know. So I'm just fortunate that everyone that's closest to me, that means the most to me, they're healthy. The support system is definitely there, healthy, alive, thriving. um, I think that, again, that this is just focusing more on like what matters the most
Yeah.
and what can I do with my time today to do something that just needs to get done, that I don't really fucking enjoy, but you know what? I have no other choice. I'm home. Let me
Right.
do this. You know, and I think that's definitely a huge positive. But uh, like Greg said, like there's still anxiety about the future.
Yeah.
um but you know, at some days you just have to take the you know, just tell yourself, I'm going to push this to the side, we'll worry about this later.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do about it now.
Right.
You know, thankfully I'm working, so like I just can't worry about things too much for a large portion of the day. I just got to get done what needs to get done. You know, so those are, and really just more time with, you know, Mallory and
Hmm.
my fiance and
Yeah.
our animals.
Andy, being based in New York, what has your experiences been just kind of being almost in the epicenter of this for this country?
Yeah, no, legit being in the epicenter of this thing. Um, it The first couple weeks of March was extremely anxious, anxiety ridden. I felt like, you know, from my own perspective, the first 2 weeks of March, no one was really taking this seriously.
Mm,
A lot of people were heading to the supermarket to get prepared for this, but I feel like no one was actually doing anything to, you know, avoid stuff like wearing gloves or wearing masks. I felt like that happened on the third or fourth week of March, where I would see Joe Schmo on the street wearing a mask. Like that wasn't, that I think was the shift when I saw the normal guy in the street
mm,
wearing a mask and gloves. And I think um, there's something incredibly haunting about seeing a subway. We live by one of the elevated rails. Seeing a subway pass by, um, you know, 6 o'clock at night when everyone's supposed to be going home, completely empty. It's really haunting. It's really anti New York. You know, New York is obviously the most. It's just hustle and bustle, people
right.
on top of people, for better or worse. But I think that was like an image of anything that really just hit me. Like I was like, wow, that you will never ever see that ever in your life. I've been practicing social distancing and quarantining, so I have a huge itch to take my bike over the where we're close to the brook, we're close to the Williamsburg Bridge, and just I really want to experience that. But um, we got sick, which what we think was with Corona in the beginning of March. So I didn't want to go spread my germs, and on top of that, like I didn't want to get hurt. You know, like
Yeah.
you don't. Not everything is under your control. God forbid I took that bike
Right.
out, I hit a pothole, I break a leg, then that means I have to go into the hospital, and
Right.
then a reinfection is another thing that like no one has a grasp on it. I haven't left like my neighborhood, you know, I haven't gone beyond like maybe a 4 or 5 block radius since March. 13th when I got really sick and I couldn't leave the house.
Yeah.
That so the selfish part of me wants to go and see what New York is actually like with all this desolation, but the responsible side of me is like, don't get hurt, take it easy,
Yeah.
walk the block, take the dog out for like maybe 5 or 10 blocks and then come back home. Don't be out there too much.
And that's a big, what we've been told of how we end this is just staying home and not doing that, whether you have it or not. Maybe you think you do and you might infect others, or you don't know who's around you or how it's transmitted. So it's hard, but I feel like it's kind of essential, right?
Well, it's a responsible thing to do, and especially since um, I had all the symptoms except coughing. Like I had a small cough, but it didn't really go down to my lungs. Mallory
Mm.
had it. She had it for like almost 3 weeks, maybe 3.5, where the last week and a half, she had a really bad cough and she felt you know, like something was in her lungs, like she felt pressure on her chest.
Mm.
Um, it was, I was just pulling my hair out about it
Right.
because you can't do anything. You can't do anything really. You just got to sit back, and it was really, really frightening and scary for a moment. But she got better, thank God. And like her taste, her sense of smell and taste are coming back. Actually, it came back this week. I think the worst of it and the worst of the worrying is over. But I don't want to have the opportunity to have to go to the hospital because what you see of what's going on in the hospitals around us in the borough, like it's mayhem. It's mayhem.
Yeah.
It's really, really awful. And I don't understand how people in other parts of this country can look at that footage and say that like, oh, don't worry about it. Like that's crazy. That's like
Right.
nihilistic.
Right.
So take what's happening here as a precaution, guys. Like take what's happening here as it's going to happen. It may happen
Mm-hmm.
near you, or if you live in a more suburban or rural area, a couple months from now, who knows?
I really appreciate Andy and Greg joining me for this first ever, I don't know what to call it, a broadcast. I'm not sure, but it's been fun, and I really appreciate, one, them as friends, and two as just people that put a lot of thought into life and what they do with work and family and friends, and taking the time to share this. I really appreciate it. So check out their work, their websites, their social media. You won't regret it. They have a lot of really entertaining stuff out there, and stuff for sale too. So help your local illustrator, artist, designer um, in your community. So thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.